This is the Ramana Maharshi Self-Knowledge Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching. I bring this to you in this satsang. The background image today is Ramana Maharshi eating in the dining hall. Ramana felt that food should be given equally to all. He was served last, ensuring that there was food for everyone. He once chastised someone for giving him extra pieces of potato curry, saying, "You served me extra curry. I felt ashamed to eat more than the others. You should always serve me less than other people. The more you love my people, the more you love me." This was his way. The principle of equality for all was respected with regard to the daily feeding of the poor also, which took place at lunch just before the devotees and Ramana had their lunch. The poor received the same food as the ashram inhabitants. He was very particular about this, too. One day he noticed that the feeding of the poor outside was not carried out correctly, and that one of them did not receive his share. The next day, when the poor had formed a line for their meal, he went outside and said to those serving, "If you do not get them food first, I will not come to the dining hall at all. I will stand under this tree along with these people, stretch out my hands for food like them, and when I am given a ball of food, I will eat it, go straight to the hall, and sit there." It's kind of funny that sometimes he treated those serving at the ashram like jailers who he would rebel against. This series is a paragraph-by-paragraph review of Ramana's seminal book, Who Am I?, the all-text version, edited by Ramana himself. On to this week's reading. First, though, this is a picture of the Ramana dining hall. I think I took this picture. Carol and I, while we lived in India, ate lunch there about every week. We enjoyed sitting on the floor with all the people and being served the same kind of Indian lunch that Ramana had. The menus that they use today are still those that were devised by Ramana many years ago. Now to the Who Am I? This is paragraph 24. Countless vishaya-vasanas, subtle tendencies of the mind in relation to objects of sense gratification, coming one after the other in quick succession like the waves of the ocean. agitate the mind. Nevertheless, they too subside and finally get destroyed with progressive practice of Atma dhyana, or meditation on the self. Without giving room even to the thought which occurs in the form of a doubt, whether it's possible to stay merely as the very self, whether all the vasanas can be destroyed. One should firmly and unceasingly carry on meditation of the self, on the self. The mind is stirred up by tendencies, vasanas, ideas, or habits that we have built up over time. With progressive self-inquiry, these become quiet. When your mind is quiet in meditation and then starts to stir, this is a tendency rising. Nome teaches that the root of these tendencies is in misidentification, placing our identity somewhere where it is not. With this is also the mistake of thinking that happiness comes from some external source. Inquire into this to free yourself from the tendency. Ramana gives a key recommendation for practice when he says, quote, one should firmly and unceasingly carry on meditation on the self. The advice is to continue the inquiry throughout the day, not just in the time of meditation. He says, do not let doubt get in your way. Doubts are just more thoughts. As inquiry deepens, you start to change the habit of mind that looks outside for happiness, and you build a new habit of inquiry to focus within, on the self. When you discover that the source of happiness really is within, then these tendencies start to dissolve. Some notes for practice. One way to start to move your inquiry outside of your seated meditation time is to use moments in everyday life differently. For example, when doing something like standing in line at the supermarket, notice your sense of being and ask, where does this sense of being come from? Or just notice the consciousness that is at the root of all your experience. When driving in traffic, listen to the sound of the road and the tires and ask, for whom is this sound? Look at a tendency, investigate it, and see what is the misidentification, and is that really who you are? See the idea of happiness that comes with this tendency and inquire, is this who I am? What is the source of happiness? On to our videos for the week. First is from James Swartz, and James Swartz is talking about vasanas.
going to explain how these vasanas are created. He said they start from emptiness, but here this is just looking at from a jiva's point of view. Krishna's explained to Arjuna. He says, when you dwell on objects, dwell means to think. When you consistently think about an object, then what happens? It says attachment arises. Why? Because you think about an object because it's attractive to you. Or unattractive. If it's a fear object, it's a negative object, when you think about it, then you get attached also, because you're thinking about it. And then what happens? This attachment to the object, like sex, okay? You think, that's a great object. Everybody thinks about that, don't they? Why are people attached to sex? Because they think about sex. So what? So what? When you dwell on objects, attachment arises. Then what happens with it? What's the next stage? Attachment causes desire. Now you start really wanting that object. The more you think about it, the more attached you get, then you start to really want that object. And then what happens? When desire is obstructed, anger arises. Now, why does anger arise? You can see where anger comes from. Anger is obstructed desire. Well, why does anger arise? Because the objects are what? Are in a field of duality, in a field of change, in a field of time. And the object that you want is often not available. Or when you look like you're going to possess that object, you have that object, then reality or Ishwar takes the object away. Or there's some obstacle or block to my gaining the object. So what is anger? It's just frustrated desire. It's just thwarted desire. It's an outward moving energy. It's rajas, it's rajoguna. So you're moving out toward the object, always going away. And then what? Now there's a barrier. The anger hit the desire hits the barrier, and what happens? It turns to anger. You're not angry because of something somebody did a long time ago. You're angry because right now you're not getting what you want. If you say X and somebody says no, I disagree, immediately anger will come, won't it? Because you feel that your idea has been blocked by that person, so you immediately become angry with that person, simply because your desire has been thwarted or frustrated. And you want them to appreciate or accept that thought or that idea that you're putting forward. Then what? Then, when your mind is angry, what happens in the next stage? Angry is rajas. Desire is rajas. Then the anger is rajas. It increases. And what does that do? It produces tamas. Whenever you do too much action, you get dull. Isn't it? Whenever you're too active, then you get tired. It's just the way it works. So when you got too much desire, then you have a lot of anger. Often that's just repressed anger. You don't even know you're angry. You just you keep focusing on what you want, but you don't see the anger building up underneath. And then what happens? You get deluded. Your mind gets cloudy and dull. And now what? Now what? And delusion leads to loss of memory. In other words, you can't remember what you're here for. You can't remember what you really want. Remember, I want freedom. And now, when I have desire and get angry and then I get deluded, I forget what my goal is. I lose my direction. That's why I get confused. Many people come to these talks because they're confused. They've lost their direction. They when they hear that they want freedom, they're, oh my God, you're right, I want freedom. Now it makes sense. But they'd completely forgotten that they wanted freedom because they were all depressed and deluded because of their desires had caused that delusion. And then it says what? When memory goes, when you can't remember what you want, then your mind is incapacitated. In other words, your mind doesn't work properly. It means your discrimination is faulty. You start making the wrong choices. You can't tell what's real from what isn't real. You can't tell what's right from what's wrong. And so you make the wrong choices. And then what? The mind becomes incapacitated. And when the mind no longer functions properly, one's life is destroyed. That doesn't mean you die physically. It means spiritually you're dead. And where did it all start? Just what? Thinking about some objects. See the slippery slope? See how that vasanas build up and take you further and further away from where you're going? Well, what's the conclusion that I should draw? Is that I should dwell on something that what? Is true and pure and perfect. So not some object I should dwell. In other words, I should think about myself all the time. Think about myself means what? I should look at everything that happens in light of the knowledge that I'm whole and complete. In light of the knowledge that I'm free. You should think I'm free. If you're whole and complete, you're free. So freedom equals being whole and being complete. So that idea that was what I should be dwelling on. That will not lead to anger. That will not lead to what? Delusion. That will not lead to loss of discrimination and incapacitation. That will lead to what? Bliss, fullness, happiness. In that dark daylight world in which all beings sleep, the wise person who has mastered the senses is awake. Master the senses means control the vasanas. Understand the vasanas, looks at them, steps back and observes what's happening. And if you can't keep the thoughts from disturbing you, at least control the senses, control the actions, so you don't create karma. Because when you create unwanted karma, then your mind's going to get disturbed again. There's a beautiful verse here. Just as water flows into an ocean, leaving the ocean unchanged, objects arising in the mind of a self-realized person leave it unchanged. How cool is that? When the thoughts come, and they arise and they disappear, what? The mind remains steady. Even if anger comes, it's like a cloud and it disappears and the mind remains steady, still. It accommodates all emotions in it. Just like the ocean accommodates. No matter how much water pours into the ocean just remains the same. But the desirer of objects is never peaceful. If you want stuff, you're just not going to be peaceful. And these people don't want objects. That's why we're talking about enlightened people. They don't want objects. They don't want love. They don't want security. They don't want pleasure. They don't want virtue. They don't want power. They don't want entertainment. They don't want anything. Because they're so full and happy inside themselves that they know that nothing that comes from that, no object can add to that happiness. The one who abandons the belief in I and mine and moves through life without longing is peaceful. Now, how can you give up the idea that something that that something belongs to me. How can you do that? By understanding Ishvara. What does that mean? That means understanding that everything belongs to Ishvara. If nothing belongs to me, do I have to keep anything? Do I have? Even when I think I have it, does it belong to me? Even when you say this is my body, is it actually your body? Well, if it's your body, then why don't you keep it when Ishvara wants to take it away? Huh? If it's your body. Huh? Ishvara's going to come one day. He's going to knock on your door. He's going to say, he's in the form of Mr. Death. He's going to say, excuse me, I'd like your body. You say, oh no, it's my body. You can't have my body. You think that's going to work? Do you think Ishvara cares that you think it's your body? Ishvara doesn't care. Ishvara just takes your body. Sorry, got the wrong idea. This is my body. I'm taking it back. Boom. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Dust, return it. It comes from the ashes. It comes from dust, and back it goes. It's not yours. And these people know that. Your thoughts. Are those my thoughts? Oh, they're your thoughts. Okay, well then just keep them. Don't change them. They're your thoughts. You own those thoughts. You're in control of those thoughts. Good. Well, just hang on to the thoughts you got right now and just keep it for 10 minutes. Can you do it? You can't do it. Why? Because they're Ishvara's thoughts. Ishvara's doing the thinking, and Ishvara's going to force you to change your thoughts whether you like it or not. In other words, they're not your thoughts.
And now we will listen to Mooji tell us how to deal with vasanas.
Please, can you say something about shadow work? The inerrance in the self is the way, and yet the vasana tendencies of the ego. They're still in operation. And this I want to talk about then a little tiny bit. Inerrance in the self you mentioned is the way, and yet the vasanas. So inerrance in the self mean to abide consciously at the place of either the feeling I am or the weakness of this I am. And when this is done, when this is clear, something is recognized non-phenomenally, a non-phenomenal recognition I call it, where somehow there is, everything falls away. Everything falls away in terms of the substance. It falls away. Sometimes people ask me, is the world real or not? I say, for the relative mind it's real. For the awakened mind it is unreal. And I'll explain what unreal. I don't mean it doesn't appear. But the way in which it appears to the body-mind is very different from the way it appears when there is consciousness holding on to itself. Now, inerrance in the self is the way, and yet the vasanas, or the tendencies of the ego, still operate. Vasanas mean some latent tendencies that sometimes we are carrying for quite a long time. Maybe strong desire to be with a person, or to be having sex every day, or whatever it is, or whatever, different things, and very strong-rooted tendency, or the fear easily of feeling insecure, or the need to be always in the limelight, or the fear of rejection, or whatever it is. That when they are so loud, and they are loud simply for one reason, they are full of identification, full of identity. That's the only thing that can really become loud, is something's full of identification, like pus is full of it. And why we speak about it, why not just excuse it like it's only manifestation? Because when they are in ascendance, when these forces come up inside, they give the impression of holding the beingness hostage. so that somehow it's like you're forced to be in this space with them. It's like identity and so on. It's very difficult if you're told, but you are the witness of this. Then some people can just about retrieve that, whoa, but wait a minute, it's a phenomenon, it feels so strong, it's like it's taking the body, it's more loud almost than the consciousness. This is the impression it feels. Then how can it be that even in abiding in the self, these forces will come? And funnily enough, sometimes it is when you have clear that you are not this, and you begin to see, and I say keep checking in, keep bringing the attention back just to where you are, and find that you're the silence and the space. Then this is called weakening of the vasanas. Meaning that they need to have an identity to hold on to. Therefore, this is why those who have transcended their influence say that they don't exist. But only then they don't exist. As long as you're in the relative state that you are the body-mind person, then they will exist to you. They will feel, they will have the power, the presence, and the force, the ability to distract the attention will seem to be in them. They will make you feel like you're human, that you are a person. It really, these forces keeping you in the modification, I am a person, and I'm different from other persons. And that is a strong modification of the truth. If you feel that these forces are strong in you, then you identify them clearly. When they arise next time, don't speak about them from the past, because there's no vitality right now. But in the moment when they are coming, and I'm preparing you ahead of time, write down and identify what is the message inside this energy. What is it telling me? It is saying that you're not good enough, or you're saying you're not going to get it, or it is saying that, yes, you are, oh, I am something special, and yeah, this type of thing, you want to go with this, it's feeding the ego or whatever way. Then somehow you write this down clearly first. This is what it is about. Now find out, for whom is it? For whom is it? Who is suffering this fear? Who is suffering from this weakness? Who has this desire? Who has this need? Huh? And then of course something might say, well, it's me. No, but I don't want you to say it's me. I want you to go to the me place inside you. Use the spell of the feeling, because it's all inside the body mind. It will feel. Sometimes when you're like this, you don't want to come to satsang. I don't want to go there. Somehow I feel terrible. I feel you're on fire, and your mind is like a forest fire. Okay, it's a good time to come to satsang. But you look at the same time, you feel this inside, and you find out, who suffers this. Really be intelligent about this. Don't fob it off with clever, Advaita, false Advaita kind of remarks. Because if you want excuses, Advaita will give you some 5-star excuses. But if you are genuine, it is same Advaita which will break all your delusions. Look and see, does it really exist, the one who suffers? Does it exist? Go and look. And look, and then see what happens. Keep steadily looking. Sometimes the mind will send another question to say, try this other question. Say, no, don't swap this question for another question. Stay with this question. Keep quiet. Don't scratch your head. Just keep quiet and focus and remember your question. Don't keep digging. Just stay present with it. And at some point you will feel something moves off a little. Maybe some space comes. Space comes. And then peace comes. It's almost as though a battle has been won to your advantage. And then some sense of release, a relaxation, exhaling. Also, don't identify with that. Don't identify with any result. Just you're looking. Go back and double check again. Just keep checking in. And check again. And check again. All these inquiries will return you to peace. This is the natural direction and outcome of your inquiry. It will take you back to space, inner space, and joy, and freedom, light, and a newfound confidence that you can tackle anything like this. Bring anything into the light of the inquiry and keep doing this. These forces will come again and again and again, but each time you meet them in this way, they will reduce in power. They will reduce in ferocity, and you will defeat it. You being who? You are the consciousness I am, combing out the noise that you have acquired and remaining only in that space of being. Gradually one comes to see that even the sense of being is itself witnessed. That can be going alongside the seeing. You will come to see that you are the feeling of existence, and at the same time this existence is simultaneously felt against a background of unchanging awareness. This is your unchanging being, your own unchanging awareness. Your dynamic existence is the feeling I am, and the costume of that existence is the me, the little me, if you want to call it. Enjoy. It's only a role that consciousness is playing. No harm. When it is seen with a clear light of understanding, no harm will be done. And like this, you will go. You will not say, oh yeah, I really finished that one. No. I who? And you will still see that the still ego is finding a way to speak, appearing to be consciousness. Like this, you do it. You keep it up for a while, and everything, all your whole experience of life, your inner outer life, everything is merging into one beautiful wholeness.
And then finally, we have Nome talking about the limitless happiness of being.
Whenever and wherever happiness shines for you, it is the bliss of your own self that so shines. Whenever and wherever something seems to be known, it is your own consciousness, the quintessence of the knower, that is so known. Whenever and wherever something seems to be, it is your own self that is existing. Your own self of the nature of Satchidananda, being, consciousness, bliss, ever is, just as it is. It is unchanging, unconditioned, without limitation, bodiless, attributeless, and entirely free of individuality. It is unborn and consequently imperishable. And this indeed is the perfect fullness, the happiness which knows no cause or condition. In order to realize that continuous, permanent, unlimited happiness that is actually our own nature, one must know oneself. What are you? What is actually yourself? Whatever is truly yourself is always so. If something appears and disappears, comes and goes in your experience, it cannot actually be yourself. What is yourself? Consider the changes that occur within the three states of mind: waking, dreaming, and deep dreamless sleep. Whatever changes, whatever is present and then absent later, or whatever is contradicted from state to state, cannot be yourself. If the self, which is infinite and eternal existence and consciousness, is not known as it is, and is mistaken, that is misidentified with something that the self is not, one's own innate happiness seems veiled, apparently limited to that extent. This represents no change in the reality, for the self ever is, just as it is, the supreme truth. But it won't be evident to one as long as misidentification occurs. Whatever appears in the waking and dreaming states ought not to be regarded as yourself, for such disappears when there is deep dreamless sleep. But your existence does not disappear. What is this existence? The same existence that is present in deep dreamless sleep is existing now in this apparent waking state. What is the existence? And what has, through imagination, apparently been added to it? A body appears in one state, yet not in another. Yet your existence, the inner consciousness, is consistently present. The body cannot be the self then, and none of its attributes, qualities, states, or activities pertain to your real self. If this is truly comprehended, immortal bliss is yours. None of the mind's content, and even the idea that a mind exists, is consistently present through waking, dreaming, and deep dreamless sleep. Yet the existence of your consciousness remains unaltered, without beginning and without end. The mind, inclusive of all kinds of thought, cannot possibly be yourself. If you realize this within yourself, yours is supreme knowledge, which is non-objective in character. The notion of I, the assumption of existing as an ego or individual, rises and disappears again while your existence, your real being, remains ever the same, perfectly full, without beginning and without end. The self cannot be an individual I. It never becomes such, but always is just as it is. Unmodified, unformed, timeless, locationless existence. That existence is Brahman, the vast absolute. If you realize this, there remains no distinct realizer. And absolute being, or Brahman, the one self, is found to alone exist eternally. If you do not realize this, the one who does not realize does not actually exist. That one who does not actually exist is the root cause of all other misidentification, that is, all other kinds of ignorance. Ignorance alone composes the false sense of limitation or bondage and brings about consequent suffering, none of which is natural. The perfect fullness of Satchidananda, being consciousness bliss, is natural, is innate. Therefore, Sri Bhagavan has said that inquiring and realizing one's true self is alone the means to recover the bliss that was never really lost. Happiness does not come from an exterior source. Suffering is not caused from without. Put an end to imagination, misidentification, and the possibility of suffering vanishes. Turn inward to know yourself, and the limitless happiness of your own being shines forth for itself.
And now we will do a little meditation, some inquiry. Breathe in and breathe out. Notice the breath as it comes in. Feel it as it goes out. Take long, slow breaths. Feel the tensions of the day dissolve. Now notice that you exist, and then inquire, investigate within yourself. Think of some tendency, some repeated action or desire. Now take it apart. What is the happiness that you are seeking with this tendency? Now, look at happiness. Where and how do you experience it? Is the source of happiness from fulfilling the desire, or is the source of happiness within? Dive into this source. And ask, who am I? What is the nature of my identity? All right. We'll close with a short chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more for you: a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. These satsangs will continue in the following weeks with this series based on the Ramana Maharshi book, Who Am I? Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.